Hello Internet, and welcome back to my series of film reviews. Last time we covered the live-action remake of Disney's The Little Mermaid. This time, my mission, should I choose to accept it, is to review all the Mission Impossible movies, leading up to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. My first stop is the film that started it all, Mission Impossible. Released on May 22, 1996 under Paramount Pictures, the studio that brought Sonic the Hedgehog to life. It is a continuation of the 1966 TV series, also called Mission Impossible, along with the 1988 sequel series. These movies star Tom Cruise as Agent Ethan Hunt of the IMF, or Impossible Missions Force. We also have Ving Rhames as Luther Stickle. That's right, Cobra Bubbles from Lilo and Stitch. Ving Rhames appears in every Mission Impossible film, from this film to Dead Reckoning Parts 1 and 2. Mission Impossible was the film that turned Tom Cruise into an action star, 10 years after his portrayal of Pete Maverick Mitchell in Top Gun back in 1986. I may consider reviewing both Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick later down the line, because Top Gun Maverick is one of my favorite films of 2022, next to Sonic the Hedgehog 2, The Batman, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Menu, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Tom Cruise is more of a daredevil than Matt Murdock, and he does all of his own stunts for every Mission Impossible film. We also have Jon Voight as Jim Phelps. Fun fact, Jon Voight is actually the father of Angelina Jolie. Jim Phelps is one of the main protagonists of the 1966 TV series, starting with Season 2. In the series, he was portrayed by Peter Graves. He is the only character from the original TV series to make it all the way into the movie, as Ethan Hunt was created specifically for the movies. In this movie, Jim Phelps is the main antagonist. He is a mentor to Ethan, who is secretly a mole working for illegal arms dealer Max, played by Vanessa Redgrave. When I first saw this film back in 2015, I thought Max being a woman's name was unheard of, until I played Life is Strange and I met Max Caulfield. Many cast members of the original series had very negative reactions to the film, especially Peter Graves when he learned that Jim Phelps would be revealed as a traitor to the IMF. I would be too, but what can you do about it? This film is directed by Brian De Palma, famed director of Carrie, Scarface, and The Untouchables. The very first Mission Impossible movie I ever saw was not this, but Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol in 2011. I didn't see this movie until 2015, when we got Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This movie would also get its own level pack in the Toys to Life game LEGO Dimensions, along with the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog. Ethan Hunt also appears in my LEGO Dimensions project, Sonic and Sonic Adventures in LEGO, which if you haven't seen yet, is really good, despite my piss-poor impression of Tom Cruise.
So you're not IMF? What are you? CIA? KGB? MI6? Actually no, we're not agents, but we are on a mission. We've been assigned to grab an emerald from this facility. That's actually my current mission right now. I decided to hold off on going after the agent who betrayed my IMF team. You know, retrieving the IMF knock list, stopping the Chimera virus, going after Owen Davian, obtaining a rabbit's foot, investigating a bombing at the Kremlin, and becoming a fugitive from the CIA, and taking down a rogue nation called the Syndicate can really do a number on an IMF agent. Get in, Sonic! For a second, I thought you were gonna quote Mean Girl saying, "Get in, loser, we're going shopping." Just get your ass in the fucking car! Whoa there, would you mind toning down the language? Sorry, Ethan, I have a nasty habit of swearing. I figured.
As much as I enjoyed working on that project, and A Merry Lego Christmas, my impression of Tom Cruise wasn't that good in my opinion. Every movie in this series contains a special message from the IMF, along with the words, "Your mission, should you choose to accept it," and a tape that self-destructs whenever it's finished playing. This is something that returns from the TV series. In the first film, is an in-flight movie on a tape, because apparently, that's how people watch movies on planes in 1996. Another staple in this series is using disguises that involve wearing masks to make them look like the people they're trying to impersonate, as well as technology that copies their voices, basically Polyjuice Potion for muggles. It starts off with a mission gone horribly wrong. Their mission, should they choose to accept it, is to go to Prague to stop rogue agent Alexander Golitsyn from stealing the CIA knock list. And no, a knock list is not a list of knock-knock jokes. NOC, or knock, stands for non-official cover. I know it's confusing. It was confusing to me at first. But after watching this movie 3 times and playing through the LEGO Dimensions level, I've come to understand that it's a list of undercover operatives and their code names. To make this easier for you guys, if someone were to steal a knock list of every DC or Marvel superhero, then the identities of Batman and Spider-Man will be out in the open, and everyone young and old will know who Bruce Wayne and Peter Parker are. This team consists of Ethan Hunt, Jim's wife Claire, Sarah Davies, Hannah Williams, and Jack Harmon, played by Emilio Estevez. All seems to be going well on their mission to stop the list from being out in the open, until everyone on Ethan's team is picked off one by one, including Jim and Golitsyn, and Ethan is the only survivor. With nowhere to run, he meets up with IMF director Eugene Kittredge, played by Henry Czerny. who will reprise his role in Dead Reckoning Parts 1 and 2. Don't even think about it, David. I heard my name, so don't you go making jokes about me. I wasn't going to, Eugene. Calm yourself. Alright, but my eyes are on you, David. And in this scene, they use a lot of Dutch angles. It's a filmmaking technique that is often used to portray psychological uneasiness or tension in the subject being filmed. So what you have to do is tilt it at an angle. This image right here of Ethan was shot with a Dutch angle. I think this was a genius move by Brian De Palma to show tensions rising. Ethan comes to the realization that there was another IMF team sent to the embassy, where his mission was supposed to take place, and that Glisson was actually working for Kittredge to look for a mole in the IMF, and that he was posing as the rogue agent that Jim sent him and his team after. The mole is believed to be working for Max the arms dealer, as part of Job 314, a reference to a Bible verse, the book of Job chapter 3 verse 4, with kings and counselors of the earth who built for themselves places now lying in ruins, the codename of the mole being Job. Kittredge then frames Ethan for being the mole, and he just books it out of there with a stick of chewing gum that's actually a plastic explosive. Red light, green light, press them together. Hasta lasagna, don't get any on ya. Fun fact, the chewing gum gadget that Sonic gives to Sonic in An Infinite World of Pain Part 1 was inspired by the explosive chewing gum from this movie, and the whistle keyring from the James Bond film The Living Daylights. One downside I have with this movie is that this movie is very hard to follow if you don't pay close attention. This is not one of those movies you boot up on Paramount Plus and you're too tired to continue, and you pause it and continue the next morning. No, it's one of those movies you have to watch in full so that you don't miss anything. Kinda like how Psycho was marketed by Alfred Hitchcock. The main thing that Brian De Palma does better than the other directors of this series, John Woo, J.J. Abrams, Brad Bird, and Christopher McQuarrie, is that Brian De Palma knows how to create suspense. More so than Alfred Hitchcock or Stanley Kubrick. And this is coming from someone who has only seen 2 Alfred Hitchcock movies and 1 Stanley Kubrick movie. Those movies being Rear Window, Psycho, and The Shining. Brian De Palma is known for directing suspense, crime, and psychological thrillers, and you can feel his influence from those genres in Mission Impossible. Just like Sam Raimi and his horror influence in movies such as Spider-Man and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. You can clearly tell that Ethan's mind snaps upon learning that the team is dead, and Kittredge framing him for being the mole in the IMF, that he's vulnerable, damaged, and above all, paranoid. And that's what Brian De Palma does best with his portrayal of Ethan Hunt in this movie. Why Brian De Palma never won any Oscars for Best Director, I have no freaking clue. But his film, The Untouchables, won for Best Supporting Actor with Sean Connery. And unlike James Bond, Ethan Hunt has weakness, he's vulnerable, and his mind snaps, and you can clearly see that with Brian De Palma's use of Dutch angles and other filmmaking techniques. Ethan sees that Claire is alive, and she arrives at the safe house telling Ethan that according to Jim, and no, I'm not referring to the 2001 sitcom According to Jim, they were compromised, which enabled her escape. Ethan arranges a meeting with Max, warning her that the knock list is a fake. It has a tracking device attached to it. Then she realizes that Ethan is telling the truth, and when Kittredge's men arrive, they book it out of there. He convinces her that he can obtain the real knock list in exchange for $10 million, as well as the true identity of Job. Ethan and Claire then recruit 2 agents for a top-secret mission, Luther Stickle and Franz Krieger. Their mission, should they choose to accept it, is to raid CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia to steal the real knock list, in a heist that's damn near impossible to complete without triggering a shit ton of alarms. The sequence that ensues is one of my favorite scenes in the entire Mission Impossible series, because it's so suspenseful that upon my first viewing of this film, I felt uneasy. And it's one of the reasons why Brian De Palma is the perfect director for this film. There's a bunch of security measures, like a voice print identification and a 6-digit code. The only person allowed in the room goes through those 2 measures, and only into the outer room. Then a retinal scan and a keycard is the only way to shut down the security measures while the heist is taking place. Anything can trigger the alarms, such as noises louder than a whisper, rising temperatures, and the air duct in which Ethan goes in is guarded by a laser grid, and the floor is pressure sensitive, so Ethan has to be hanging from a rope in order to grab the knock list and get the fuck out of there. Even a drop of water or a drop of sweat can set off the alarm. Like I said, this entire heist scene made me feel uneasy and had me on the edge of my seat. And that's what a good action film is supposed to do. Not unlike most modern action films where the hero is damn near invincible and there's guns blazing left and right. Scenes like this add suspense and realism to action films, and Mission Impossible captures that flawlessly. So they set off the fire alarms, disguise themselves as firefighters, and Claire puts poison inside the main security guard's coffee, makes him so sick to the point where he starts throwing up. And Ethan doesn't want Krieger to kill anyone, because that's not part of the mission. No body count whatsoever. This is Mission Impossible and not the Suicide Squad. Alright, on the count of 3, I want you to say your favorite thing to have for breakfast.
1, 2, 3. Toast. Toast.
I heard you the first time, Ethan, you didn't need to repeat yourself. What I love about the heist scene is that there's no music, just absolute silence.
From here on in, absolute silence.
That means no sneezing and no coughing. If someone caught a cold during the mission, then it would be a bust. So after many close calls, Ethan makes it out of there with the real knock list, and they book it all the way to London. Meanwhile, Kittredge has Ethan's mother and uncle arrested in order to lure him out. Before that, Ethan gives Krieger the floppy disk containing the list, because floppy disks were a thing in 1996. At the Liverpool train station, Ethan calls Kittredge from a payphone and allows the phone call to be traced, only for him to realize that his old leader Jim Phelps faked his death. He tells Ethan that Kittredge is the mole, but that's just a steaming pile of bullshit. Jim is the real mole, a revelation which infuriated the original cast of the Mission Impossible TV series. How Ethan knows that Jim is the mole? The Bible that was used in Prague was taken from the Drake Hotel in Chicago, where Jim was previously stationed. So Ethan pretends to believe Jim. He plans on delivering the list to Max on a train to Paris, while also inviting Kittredge to the meeting. On the train, Ethan directs Max to the list, and she sends him to the baggage car where the money and Job are located. Luther uses a jamming device to prevent Max from uploading the list to the servers. Claire then shows up to take her share of the money from Jim, who is then revealed to be Ethan in disguise. When the real Jim arrives to take the money at gunpoint, Ethan sends a live video of the confrontation to Kittredge, thus revealing Jim to be the traitor in the IMF. Jim kills Claire, then we get the final battle between Ethan, Jim, and Krieger, who is revealed to be in cahoots with Jim. As Jim attempts to climb onto the helicopter using a tether, Ethan hooks it onto the train, preventing Krieger from flying away and forcing the helicopter into the Channel Tunnel. And that's when we learn Ethan's favorite playground game.
Red light! Green light!
He has another piece of exploding chewing gum, and he uses it to kill Jim and Krieger. Kittredge then has Max arrested and taken into custody, and recovers the knock list from Luther. As Luther and Ethan are reinstated into the IMF, Ethan is unsure about returning to the team. On the flight home, an attendant approaches him and asks him if he's ready to take on a new mission as team leader. I'm giving Mission Impossible a 9 out of 10. This is one of those rare film franchises that gets better with each new entry, just like with John Wick. Sure, there have been a few bumps on the road here and there, mostly from Mission Impossible 2, but this is one of those film series that gets better with each new entry. Tom Cruise has always been one of my favorite actors because of his dedication to risking life and limb for doing authentic stunts without any green screen. I love it when movies go above and beyond without using a single pixel of CGI. The first Mission Impossible movie aged like a fine wine, and remains one of the best action films of the 90s, next to Speed and The Matrix. Brian De Palma was the perfect director for this first entry, and you can see his influence on the thriller genre during the heist scene. Of course, the original cast of the Mission Impossible TV series hated the film, but this is my thoughts and mine alone. Mission Impossible is still great more than 25 years later. My only downside is the convoluted plot that you have to pay close attention to. But despite that, Mission Impossible is one of the best movies out there. If you don't have the movie on DVD, VHS, or Blu-ray, this movie, along with the others, is on Paramount+. Stay tuned for my review of Mission Impossible 2 coming soon, along with the other Mission Impossible films. Until then, I'll see you all next time.